Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have some civic students from Newmarket High School in the audience today.
Ladies, thank you. This isn't going to be really exciting. Representative Cahill, why don't you just give an idea of what the bill is about and why we're here for this meeting?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have shared some information with them, including the video that we had a few years ago when we first began this bill with the actor who portrayed Luis on Sesame Street advocating so carefully for this payroll card idea. So what happens is when you have a job, and as we've discussed this, they do have jobs, you may be paid with cash, check, or direct deposit. And another option is a payroll debit card for those particularly who don't have a bank account, don't want a bank account, or are unable to have one. And this is an option that is offered, but and our committee has previously wanted to retain the option of a paper check, as that is a choice that when someone wants their wages in a paper check, they should have it. That's where we've come down thus far.
One of the things that's important when we make decisions here in this committee is we have to think about everybody. We have to think about someone barely making $20,000 a year and trying to stay afloat, and someone making a whole bunch of money a year. We have to think about big businesses, small businesses, and everyone in between, not just the simple ones you think about at the grocery store or whatever. There's a lot of small, different one or two man businesses, some things that I don't even understand, some high-tech stuff that is far above me. So when we make the decisions on these things, well, this may be good for one, it may not be good for another.
Exactly.
So as we come here today, we've had a hearing on the bill, and we listened to testimony from people who came up to the desk and said why they want this bill or maybe why they don't want the bill. And sometimes an hour-long conversation is not sufficient enough for us to determine whether or not, we like it, or whether there are some mistakes in it, whether some things that we could change to make it better. Because we don't like to put out things out of this committee that go to the House floor if they're not ready. And this one isn't ready. And someone has submitted a potential amendment to make some changes based on the comments that we made in the committee. So that's what we're going to do today. As you know, I always kind of keep subcommittees more informal. So if anyone from the departments or anyone here would like to opine or give your opinion on whatever, now that you've had an opportunity to kind of look at the amendment, feel free to just raise your hand and you can come up and be recognized. You need the amendment?
Do you have the amendment?
I have the amendment.
Yeah, are there any more copies of the amendments? I had 8. You guys have any extra there?
There's no extra.
Okay. Like, why don't you grab one, and then if your students want to look at it, they can kind of look at it.
Are you bringing this amendment?
No, the amendment has not been brought. Okay, this was a suggested amendment by the lobby firm that has been hired by ADP. If any amendment is something that we would be agreeable to, I'm sure they will all have the prime sponsor, Representative Kofalt, bring it forth. The two issues I believe that we have on this bill is, number one, the ability for someone to still have the paper check. Number two, the requirements of the employer to be responsible if the check card has a glitch in the computer system, or if the employee loses or misplaces their card. And the third issue is whether or not this favors one business over another and makes it impossible for others to be in the payroll business. Those are the three issues that I have seen. Is there anyone else that has any other things that they've noticed?
Bill, yeah, we can go on all day, but I'll keep it brief.
All right, Representative Avalani.
Who's coming? Who's the lucky recipient of questions?
open dialogue with the four of us to discuss.
Oh, so I took it upon myself to download and find top 5 payroll companies that would possibly benefit from this going forward, and their list of fees. Some I could live with, some I could not.
Can you provide us an example of
Yes.
some of the fees that you have
Yes,
an issue with?
Rapid Pay Card is one company. They're one of the largest in the country. There's 5 or 6 of them that provide payroll services and other things. They charge for cash access at anything ranging from $1.50 to $3.50.
So if you just want to take a cash deposit off your pay card,
Yep.
but you don't know whether it gives you the first one for free. The first one you get your paycheck, it's $500 for the week. Whether you can take that all without a fee.
Yep, they can take the
You have to. It's New Hampshire law.
first transaction each pay period for those listed with one free. Otherwise, the cardholder is charged a listed fee. So that is one that charges a whole host of things. Monthly maintenance fees was another one on Money Network, on top of other customer service fees, inquiry fees, and everything else. Also, a limit per day. ATM withdrawal limit, $600 per transaction per day. $10,000 check limit per day. Transaction limits per day over the counter of $8,000. So if you make more than that, or we're saving up for something to go shopping or on a vacation, you can't get all your money for free. And then international banks and everything else. And then there was PIN debit transactions, which was also a limit, $3,000 per day. And signature debit transactions, which is part of the branded Visa MasterCard, offers signature debit pays.
I find this one very interesting. To get a replacement card, if the employer provides it, they still charge you $5, even though the employer did everything. If it's a replacement card done by the company, Rapid Pay Card, is $10 and 99 cents. Now, this is not Wisely. This is not Wisely that has some kind of ownership relationship with ADP, the people that want the bill. A bill payment, 99 cents every time you want to pay a bill.
Mm-hmm. So these are the companies that would be, I don't want to say benefiting, but be able to enjoy this type of legislation. And I'm all for reducing employer overhead, but I don't see how this reduces the employee's fees by getting a paper check, by getting direct deposit, by getting what we've done for the last 40 or 50 years when all of this came about. I don't see a problem with what we have now. There is one in the, I did manage to find the Wisely Pay one, which is part of their thing. I did highlight one section that came, they also have plenty of fees as well. Highlighted one section that was kind of upsetting to me. Liability for unauthorized transactions. If you do not tell us within 2 business days after you learn of the loss or theft of your card, and we can prove we could have stopped someone from using your card without your permission, if you had told us, you could lose as much as $500. How is that beneficial to an employee to have a pay card forced upon them by this legislation?
They also have an inactivity fee.
Yes.
And so if you, I don't know, change jobs and you're not getting a paycheck, a pay period every week from that job, maybe you're looking for another job, your money goes away a little bit at a time. And as you pointed out, this isn't just for Wisely, and anybody with a payroll card can do this. And further, the payroll cards are allowed now as an option. So I don't see, I mean, if I had an opportunity to prohibit them, I'd probably be looking at that instead.
Do we know if these fees that he was just talking about pertain to the company, that ADP?
We kind of went over a number of different things. The first one was not. The Wisely company is...
I have the Wisely charges.
was the one he just mentioned, that one sentence.
Yeah.
about you could be responsible up to $500 if you don't notify them within 48 hours of the loss of a pay card, and then fraudulent use. That's, well,
Yep. And there is one from Skylight, which is also, I think, is in use in this state. I know Amazon possibly has this through through their signature MasterCard. They also have a bit of fees and limited on ATM withdrawal limits of $325 per transactions, not to exceed $940 in any 24-hour period. How is that allowing somebody to withdraw all of their paycheck at once?
And I know they've told us that, you don't want to be cashing a check because you got all that money, you could lose it or be robbed. Even if you take your one free bite at the apple, there you are walking around with your whole paycheck in cash.
Mhm.
But
people do that now. I mean, some people, get their check. As you know, employers in New Hampshire must have a place for you to cash your check for no fee.
right,
So they go in there and they don't have an account there. Maybe they don't have a checking account. Maybe they don't want a checking account. So they have to cash it there. I remember, this is going back a years, guys, but I used to work at a Grand Union. I used to work in the deli in the Grand Union when I was in high school. And we got our paycheck. And I had a little savings account at some local, bank and trust or whatever. So I got my first paycheck and I was like, all right, got my first paycheck. I want to go cash this in my bank. And the manager said, no, you have to cash it here. So you have to go up to the, the courtesy desk and cash your check. I thought that was, now this is a long time ago,
right.
40 years ago, 40, whatever. But anyway, I digress, sorry.
Was there a maximum amount? I asked that question. I don't remember what the answer was. You remember?
There was a couple of maximum accounts. The Skylight has a $5,000 over-the-counter cash withdrawal limit. So if you have more than $5,000 in your account, you can only withdraw it once per day. Same thing with transfers, account-to-account transfer limits, not to exceed 4 transfers or up to $1,500 in any 24-hour period. So if you needed to transfer your mortgage payment over, you wouldn't be able to do that under some of these options. Now, I did find the ones that were outside of New Hampshire and they had different fees that weren't as transparent. It looks like some of them that are here that are in the state do offer zero your first withdrawal free, and then it adds in other domestic ATM withdrawals. It doesn't identify which one, each withdrawal after the first withdrawal as $1.75.
If you go on the website for Wisely and others, you will find that legislatures have changed the laws as to when they've implemented these pay cards. They've put curbs into what fees can be charged. Some have said that you can't charge for a replacement, others. So it varies by state what each one of these companies can charge.
So I'm assuming there's no maximum amount that they can have on the card. So let's say somebody doesn't have a bank account and they just keep all their money in there and may live at home, don't spend any money. Is there a maximum amount of money that they can actually have on the card itself?
Yes, per card, per account is $15,000 on some of them. Some of them are $40,000, and some of them are $10,000.
Okay.
So there is a maximum that you can leave on there.
But you get a fee for keeping it there, like utilizing it as kind of a savings account?
I couldn't get into that part of their stuff because I wasn't a customer. But it looks all nice on the front when it says no fees for this or that, till you turn it over.
There is also a fee if you wanted to add money,
Yes, there is.
$5.95.
That
Flat
is,
rate.
yeah, Wisely has that. Some other ones don't have that option. You have to, there was one on here that you could buy into a program for $10 a month. You could load your own checks into your card,
Right.
but then you have to buy a membership fee to change your card structure.
All right, so without being a dead horse here, it's clear we don't appreciate the fees.
Right.
I'd like to go through the bill and some of the issues we had with the bill, and then review this amendment. So one of the first changes of the bill comes on page 1, line 10. With written authorization of the employee by direct deposit to banks to the employer's choice. Now, I think we asked the question, but I don't remember if we got the answer that we were really looking for as to why that was being stricken out. Is that because when this was written 10 years ago, you needed authorization because it's so common right now? There's really no need for the authorization by the employee for direct deposit. Why was that stricken out?
That was my question.
I wonder if it's just, they didn't give you didn't give them a payroll card, so now their next option is, I'm sorry, a direct deposit account information, so now the option is payroll card.
That's in D. Look at,
D.
Payroll cards are already allowed in New Hampshire.
Right.
So why was with written authorization? Does anyone from the Department of Labor remember why they struck that out from the hearing? I usually write my notes all over it, and I don't recall that we actually got an answer
We did not.
as to why. So I see no reason to strike that out. I don't see the purpose. I like there to be a little bit of written authorization. I don't see that there's a harm. I don't see that anyone came and from the banks and saying we don't need it anymore, or the employers are saying we don't need it anymore. Usually you have to give authorization because you have to give them your routing number and account number. So when you're there, they might as well just sign on the dotted line saying they gave you the information and it's okay. I don't really see any, if we're trying to have a mindset here of moving forward, to a newer age with newer technology, I just don't see any reason why you wouldn't have that. Because someone's got to send you an email or send you something or fill out a form.
Hand you a check, voided check, or a voided deposit ticket. They have to give you something as an employer. You can't just drop money. I can't say, okay, I just hired Mike yesterday, I'm gonna drop money in his account. How do I do
Exactly.
that without your consent or authorization?
So is there any disagreement as to why that we should not strike that out?
Can we ask the department how they enforce that rule if they go in and do a audit? Do you guys enforce a direct deposit authorization?
As far as going in and doing an actual inspection, the department's gonna be looking to see whether or not there is written authorization in the file. If there's not written authorization in the file, then they could be subject to a violation.
Could you define written authorization?
I don't know that there is, and I apologize for not checking on this, I don't know that there is actually a specific form, but a specific piece of paper that says I authorize ABC employer to deposit money into a bank account, and I have provided a copy of either my deposit slip or a voided check for the purpose of doing so, signed employee A, dated whatever.
So-
That's something akin to what they would be looking for.
So a voided check from an employee in their file would basically authorize the employer to direct funds.
That's not signed by the employee, it's just a voided check. But I hear what you're saying, that the employee has to provide that voided check or whatever is necessary to have the routing and the bank account numbers. But the way I read this, the way the department reads this, is it has to be a signed statement from the employee. And a voided check is not gonna be sufficient for a signed statement from the employee.
So we should define written authorization then for employers?
If this were to be altered to say that it did not require a signature, but it would depend on what the language you put in it.
So how would you dispose of this if this line was taken out? By direct deposit to the banks of the employee's choice, how would you find that? How would you be able to enforce that?
If the line was stricken out the way that it's shown right now.
Correct.
In the current bill. And therefore, the current bill would not require any type of written authorization.
That's what it looks like they're trying to do here.
Exactly. The way that the inspection unit then they would be able to step over that one aspect of it that used to be in the law if this passes, and look at the fact that the employee did hand over whatever information was required. There may be a question as to whether the employee was forced to hand it over because that's the only option, and that's not something that I would be able to dig into right now. But if the employee willingly, voluntarily handed over his banking information for direct deposit, the department would be able to see that as the employee consenting.
So if you're doing a regular, if you're called in for a wage claim, you would actually look at this and decide whether the employee was forced to participate in direct deposit, or would this just be
If the employee made a comment, if there was a statement that was made, that would be further down into an inspection, but looking at it at face value, if an employee, again, if this language was stricken, if an employee offered up their banking information for direct deposit, with this language being stricken, the department would be able to look at that during an inspection and be able to determine that that was probably consent.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Anything further than that would probably require a hearing.
I know you weren't prepared for this.
It's okay.
Top of your head, any kind of rules that you have in place regarding this that helps you better, the hearing officer better define this, or the inspector?
To better define whether or not it was authorized in writing by the employee?
Yeah.
I don't believe.
Again, I know that you weren't prepared for the questions, and I
I didn't bring
haven't.
my rules,
I haven't.
but I did bring assistance.
Okay.
Yeah, off the top of our head, I don't know if there's a rule that better defines written authorization, but we can research that for you.
Okay. Well, is anyone complaining that it's a problem getting written authorization?
The inspection division has not notified us that there has been a problem obtaining authorization.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't have any interest in striking that sentence?
No, no.
I'm going to go to the next one. Under D, you can be paid by a payroll card provided that the employer shall provide to the employee at least one free means. It's been replaced with the ability. I don't like that.
Me neither.
A cornerstone of what we do here is the employee gets their pay without a fee. The ability to withdraw up to including the full amount doesn't say without a fee. Am I missing something?
Nope.
So I don't want to replace that. So now I have to look at the amendment that we're looking at. Amendment C, with written authorization of the employer, we've already agreed that that is going to stay in. They have somehow, I got to figure out how they've done this. At least one free means. Okay, so in the amendment, they did put at least one free means back in. Okay. Okay. So then we go down to further down in D. Their amendment did not address any of these things. So on line 15, starting with if an employee is enabled to, and ending on line 22 with the words 24 hours being notified. I would like to discuss that sentence. If an employee is unable to access their wages due to technical or processing deficit, the employer shall immediately provide the wages to the employee with a replacement debit card, check, or direct deposit or cash. I'm going to just do the first sentence first, and we can deal with the second sentence, all right? Let's think about it from this standpoint. Check cards are already legal. People already have them. So anything we do here is we're trying to provide some kind of protection or clarity as to what should happen when someone loses their pay card. If they're unable to access their wages due to a technical or a processing deficit, the employee shall immediately provide the wages to an employer with a replacement card, debit, or whatever. I don't like the word shall immediately. Okay, for a number of reasons. First of all, that is hard to define in law. Immediately is right now, the second after I just said it. That's immediately. One business day, the next business day, or if sooner by the employer, the next business day, or sooner if can be, you know, by the employer, something like that. Because it's tough here because, well, no, you know, I take that back because this is because wages are due but not able to because of technical and processing deficit. Okay, a defect. Sorry. As we know, you do your pay, right? What do you do when someone doesn't pay? The check bounces or whatever. You say, Department of Labor, what? Immediately?
Well, you'd have to define that.
Exactly. So what is it? How do you, you know, someone calls up, hi, my pay was due today. It's at 3:30. I always get paid. And I got this check card and it's not working. And they say there's a technical problem or maybe my employer's check didn't get there on time, so there's no money. What are you going to do? We're going to call the employer and say, give them a card, right? Give them a check then.
Oh, you're talking about as far as what the Department of Labor will do. I thought we were listening to the rest of the story. I apologize.
No, I'm.
So yeah, if they call up the Department of Labor, the inspection division has the ability to contact the employer, find out what happened, instruct them on the law, which is that they are entitled to their pay on their payday, and instruct that employer to make sure that something is issued so that employee is paid on that day, whether it be check, direct deposit, cash, gold and silver.
So, what say you on how we all agree that if a pay card craps out, the money's not there for any reason, sunspots, Verizon going down, who knows, anything. The money's not there. What do we want to utilize for a term of when they need to provide it? Same business day, within 24 hours, within 12 hours, you know, what, or are you okay with immediately?
Well, I mean, business day, if it's the weekend and then you're not in business that day, that's another hardship for the employee.
Right, I don't like that. As I talk myself through it and out of it, I agree. The next business day is not sufficient. Same business day?
Well,
I'm just saying the same day you're supposed to get, if the money's not there in your pay card, my opinion,
me a check.
yeah, or cash right now.
Right.
I don't want to say immediately because it immediately is within a second. Well, that's not right. You got to give them a couple hours maybe to figure out what the problem is. Maybe the system reboots itself and 2 hours later it's there. So that's why I said that the same day. Don't even say business day because Saturday and Sunday, someone's check is due on a Saturday
Right.
and it's not there. So do we say just the same day? Because we get paid the big bucks for.
I don't like it at all.
But this is to protect the employee.
If the employer has deposited their pay into a pay card, and whether it is the ATM or the card that is no longer working, having the employer on hook for sending that paycheck to the pay card, now having to have them send a second week's pay to that employee. You're forcing the employer to possibly pay them twice in the same day or week, when some employers might not have that kind of cash on hand. Or they might use a sweep account where they can't sweep the account till the next day. Or they use a private company that might not be open Saturday or Sunday to authorize that transfer. how do we protect the employer as well as the employee by act with this type of language?
I'm assuming this has happened with debit cards in the past, where you may have $10,000 in the bank. You go to an ATM, and for whatever reason, your card fails.
Right.
You can't get cash on the weekend.
Sure. What's happened?
You're not going to call. You're not going to get a hold of anybody at the bank.
Nope.
Figure it out. It's going to be on the next business day. So, I would like to know how they resolve those problems, because again, I don't think it's. I mean, it can't. It's got to happen.
How about if we break it down to specifics? If an employee isn't able to access their wages due to a defective card, that way you're talking about a defective card, this, you know, because you can call, the system says, no, the money's there. Everything's fine, your defective card, then they must immediately provide a replacement card, check, or cash. Breaking it down to the scenario, we have a defective card. You okay with that?
No.
Okay.
Why? So if the like you said, if you can call in and the money's there, the employer paid them. The employer
Right.
followed the law.
Right.
If they can't access their card
Okay,
because
then,
of a defect, why should the employer have to issue them a check
okay.
when
all
they've
right,
already
yeah,
paid
okay.
them?
How about a replacement card?
Replacement card, yes, but everybody charges $6 to $10 or $20 and then fees to get it expedited or overnight delivery. Your employer's not going to have. Some of these don't offer employer issued cards. So how would an employer be able to do that? The gentleman from ADP said it would be an issue as well. If it was a Saturday, because nobody at ADP works, I can issue you a card. Sure, I can give you a card. It's not going to be
Okay.
connected to anything until.
Let's look at the second sentence. Okay, since none of us like the way the first sentence is worded out, and I'm looking to protect the employee here, okay, to get their money. They gotta pay their bill, they gotta put gas in their car, they gotta have their money. Second sentence, if an employee debit card is lost, stolen, or damaged, such that the funds are no longer accessible to the employee, the employer shall provide the employee with a replacement employee debit card within 24 hours of being notified. Is that an acceptable?
So we're adding another layer of bureaucracy to an employer because they choose pay cards, which some of these don't offer the ability for the employer to hand their employee a card without some type of processing with the payroll card provider, their bank, and possibly a third party that would load that card.
But all they're asking you to do is provide them another card. If they lose their card, whether it's their fault or not, if they choose to use a payroll card, they're gonna have to pay the fee.
Correct. But it's within 24 hours of being notified. If I'm notified at 6 o'clock on a Friday, I can't provide them with the card until Monday.
Well, you probably will, because you get the way these things work is you get this card reader, okay, and you got all these blank cards. You ever go to get a gift card for Christmas? You pick up one of the pretty ones at Dunkin' Donuts and you take it and you hand it to the guy and say $25 on this, and they swipe it and they put the thing in. Well, that's what you would do as an employer.
Correct, if that certain payroll company offered that. There are other ones out here that do not.
But all you're saying is, so you're saying, what happens if I don't have those? Okay, so in your example, you have a CPA that does your payroll, right? And if the CPA is closed on the weekend, and they're the ones that have the cards, and they do all that, you're to say you're not gonna be able to abide by that.
It would be impossible because they're closed.
All right, I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because that's what we do here. What are we gonna do about the employee that needs his pay?
We're going on how this is written, not in a hypothetical, because
Okay.
I'm happy to give them their pay if they can't access their card.
How?
But I would pay them however they need to be paid. But I don't want to be forced into a box by forcing them to pay them twice. If the employee comes to me and says, hey, I can't access my card, blah, 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 and we're going away this weekend, all right, here's a check, when you get back, we'll settle up. That's how, as a small employer, I would do it. I know large employers can't do that.
But when you have a card that's no longer functional, the money is in that account in cyberspace.
Mhm.
Okay, the card's not working to grab it out of space. You give them a new card,
Mhm.
the money is still there in cyberspace and goes to the new card. You're not paying them twice.
Correct. Well, what's the difference between a direct deposit into your account, but your debit card no longer works for your account? You're gonna go to your employer and say, I want a new card because I can't access my wages?
That's the bank's problem with their debit card.
Should be the payroll company's problem by not letting them access their money.
With check cards, it does not become the check card company's problem. It becomes the employer's problem who is utilizing the payroll cards.
Mhm.
They've taken that responsibility that's what they're gonna do to use the payroll cards. So all I'm saying is if the employer,
As this is written right now, we haven't got into the other part.
well, the responsibility is all thrown away. That's a fait accompli, that's leaving. But just what I'm trying to do here, without getting too tough here, I want right now we have a law that allows you to use pay cards.
Mhm.
We have no law that tells you got to pay somebody if your card is lost or stolen or damaged and they can't get access to their funds.
What if the card is not lost or stolen or damaged and they can't access their funds because of a technical problem from one of these other companies outside of the employer's responsibility?
Well, what will happen is guy calls you, get paid on Thursday. The guy calls you Friday, says, my card's not working. I slide, it's not working. Come into the office, you look on the screen, you get a new card. If the problem is with the pay card vendor,
Mhm.
you, the employer, didn't do anything wrong. You provided them a new card
Mhm.
to access their money in cyberspace. You've done your job. You've adhered to the law.
How would the department look at that? Because as I'm reading this, the department's gonna be knocking on their door saying, hey, you need to pay this guy, he can't access his funds
But
in 24 hours.
What are they doing now?
Yeah, what's your experience been with payroll cards?
Very minimal, actually. Minimal experience. We've had some calls about complaints that came from both the employees and the employers. But there's only been a couple of them where there's been an issue with respect to being paid correctly. And those are a little different situation. Those are more with the daily cards that they have where they have paid by daily. I'm not even going to get into that. But your question,
There's one in here that does
yeah,
that.
I thought so. Your question about what would happen in a situation like that, the employer remains responsible for making sure that that employee is paid, receives his pay, and has access to his pay on his payday. Anything after that could be subject to, number one, a hearing, two, a potential violation. In a situation where there's an issue with the pay card, the employer's responsibility does not go away. That doesn't change. You can't shift that responsibility to a pay card company. That's a discussion you can have with the pay card company, but it's not a shift of responsibility. As far as if you were to have a pay card that was not operational and you're concerned, rightfully so, making two payments. Now you have one payment sitting on a pay card and one payment that you're going to have to make maybe by check, by cash, by direct deposit. You also have under Section 48 where you can get a writing. The employee and the employer agree in writing to terms of repayment of an overpayment. And this can be done at the same time as you're handing them their replacement check at that time. So you would put in, it can't be any more than 20% of the gross pay that would normally be taken, each week. There are limitations to it, but the employee can, in writing, agree to doing that. And so the employer would then have the ability to be reimbursed if there was an overpayment. There's also the possibility, and I don't know if any of those cards have the ability to cancel out an amount if you're handing them a check. That's something worth considering. I'm not sure if that would work, though, if it's paid later than the day of payday.
I don't want to get into the double payment right now
Okay.
because there's no way we're going to solve that today. There's no way we're going to work ourselves through all the different scenarios here. If in the next 15 minutes, if we can't come up with something, then we're just going to, not agree to this entire amendment here or this entire portion of the bill. I'm concerned with a card that is damaged. You know, you put a pay card up to the back of a cell phone, you know what happens? You ever been to a hotel and your card doesn't work in the hotel because it was next to your cell phone and it demagnetized itself? It happens. So, you know, somehow my card got demagnetized. So the strip's not working. I just want a new card. Don't we think the employee should have access to a card with a new card if it's just a lost, stolen, or whatever? Because if it's lost or stolen, it doesn't matter. The money's still sitting in the cloud. It's just the card is just a mechanism to get it. So giving them a new card allows them to access it. It has nothing to do with if it's the payroll company doesn't have the funds there or something like that. It's just a new card. That's all I'm trying to get at. Do we think there should be a certain specific amount of time upon the employee? Let's say it's not even payday. Let's say it's 4 days after payday, okay, and your card's not working. Okay, should you be able to get a new pay card within 24 hours? I think you should.
It costs you $30.
Okay, well, that's the choice the employer made with the employee when they decided to use the damn things.
But none of the, this last sentence, none of the employer costs associated with the payroll card or payroll account shall be passed on to the employee. Would that be passing on the cost of a payment card to the employee by having it overnighted from the company to them by expedited delivery?
I would assume that we could, in language,
That would have to come out.
coming up with this bill, figuring it out. If the fees are the problem, I mean, do we come out with something that says there's no fees to the employee? I mean,
I was actually going to talk to my comrade over here and tell him to bring that up because it's the biggest poison pill you've ever seen on a piece of legislation ever. Fine, no fees ever. I'm sure the sponsors won't appreciate that, but that is.
I go
that
to the
is
bank
something
with
that-
my debit card, or I go to the store. I'm not getting charged fees for a debit card. Then that's the key right
That's
there.
because they fee you from having the checking account to begin with.
Well, they pay me interest.
That's true. So yes, that would be, that is actually something that we could state that no fees can be passed on to the employee. Well, obviously that makes it from a business standpoint, a non-starter. Then no one would do it. No pay card companies would engage in that.
Well, again, I think if this is an option for employers, and it's difficult by law with a lot of things that are going to come down on the employer, a lot of employers may decide that they don't want to use the pay cards as a means and stay with direct deposit. And I guess I'm looking for what the advantage of the pay card is overall. I guess I haven't found that, and if somebody has an answer for that, that would be great. I mean,
Cheaper than, I guess, a $20 as they estimate the cost to process a check per pay period.
does it cost
check.
anything for? I mean, Lino, you have a business, direct deposit. Is there anything?
Minimum,
Okay,
22 cents, if anything, to initiate an ACH.
I was talking to Representative Ross Berry before he came up here, and he uses TD Bank and for direct deposit, and I think it's like $5 a month, whether he has one employee or 300. He pays one fee of $500 a month to have all his employees receive direct deposit.
Yeah, we pay a flat weekly fee. So
is the employer getting fees on these cards? I mean, that he has to pay, or he or she has to pay?
I've never used them.
I'm sure there's a fee. I guarantee there's a fee. There's a fee to use any payroll company. They have to get paid
Yeah, right.
to provide a service. But I think their point is it's cheaper for the employee. Excuse me. It's cheaper for the employer than the cost of a check. Process a check, get it done, FedEx it over.
Yeah, so the people that don't, and so this is, all right, this is, people that don't have direct deposit that may not have a bank account
Right.
in general
Right.
are gonna go with these cards. Or
Right.
that's, or they're gonna get a paper check.
Can I be really blunt?
Sure.
Payroll cards are used for a lot of people that are receiving compensation in this country illegally. That's why I don't like it. I mean, you take advantage of someone that emigrates here illegally, and they're working just to feed themselves. You know, if you're gonna do that, pay them cash. If you're gonna choose to do that as an employer, that's fine. I'm not gonna make any dispersions on you. But at least pay them cash. Don't give them one of these things. And I think some people, I mean, 93%, according to their own figures, 93% of the people get direct deposit in this state. Okay, so we're talking about 7% of 750,000 people that are employed. That's 50,000 people that we're talking about here. I don't like it because I think it's a mechanism. I'm showing my age here, right? Remember the old days when you used to go to the airport?
Cash check.
No, to go to the airport to cash a check?
Well,
No, but you go to the airport and they actually gave you some service. Now I go, I put my own stuff in, I get my own tag, I buy the whole thing, and I bring it up. Oh, and then you're going to charge me $25 if you want you to do it, so I don't do it yourself. I mean, think about all the things that we have done in this country where we used to provide services, employers used to provide services, and now you self-serve yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm surprised, because if you fly first class, they do that all for you. So I would assume you fly first, you don't fly first class.
I don't fly.
Sometimes. But I flew last week on Spirit in the first class seats up front, but anyway. It's just a, I don't like the inference of why you need this card. And I think sometimes you have to think, why doesn't someone want a checking account? Well, there are some fees. I don't like them either. You know, I'd probably pay 10 or 12 bucks a month to have a checking account at my bank. So, you know, why doesn't someone want a checking account? Okay, that's their choice, but at least if they get a check, they go to the place that they choose where they can get it free. They don't have to have a checking account. And I don't think we should mandate as a state or legislature that you can be forced into not accepting cash or a check. I'm in circles here. Let's get back to what we're doing here.
I'm going to go back just a few more years to where you would go to a bank, draw on that bank, and they would not charge you $7 to cash it because you don't have an account there. But credit unions generally don't do that, and they also don't have those wacky monthly balances. I don't like the idea that that the check in this amendment has to be upon request.
Okay.
I like it like, here's your method. You can choose which one is best for you. And if a check is on that list, and it should be, then that's what I want to do.
So line 15, starting with the words "if an employee," and line 22, ending with "being notified." We don't like any of it.
I don't like the whole thing.
Okay. Let us skip down to line 24E. There is two lines that are crossed out. I'd like you to turn to the amendment where they have added a few other lines here. Take a second to look at it because I can't see where they're trying to inject this thing. I don't know if it's a whole brand new E or not. Doesn't.
No, if I may.
Yes.
They're making it that the employee has to request a check.
Right.
From B, C, and D, the default was always, if you didn't get their direct deposit information, if you couldn't initiate an EFT to something that they were using, the default was always issuing them a check because they did not provide the information.
Right.
Further down in this that we haven't got to yet takes that away and makes it a request of the employee. So it's not an automatic default of people who may not have, or companies that may not have access to payroll cards, which is your smaller local CPAs, little payroll firms that do all your, maybe don't have access to payroll cards. This would make them, if it passed, non-compliant by not being able to offer payroll cards in sections further down in this bill, which we'll get to. And then I'm going to ask the department how they would take care of that.
Go ahead, because I'm confused, so why don't you ask while I read?
So further down in the bill, page 2, part 2B 21 through 24. A payroll company that does not have access to payroll cards in absent of banking information to have their direct deposit initiated would be forced to pay by a payroll card. Would that be correct?
In the way that the bill is currently drafted,
Mm-hmm. Because I see a lot of shalls in there.
I'm sorry, guys, I haven't eaten yet today, so I apologize. Gotta keep up my figure.
the language is verbose, but I think the answer is likely yes.
As an employer, that's how I would read that.
What was the question?
Would they be forced into paying with the pay card? It was page 2, part,
Yeah, 21 through,
yes. If an employer that wishes to only offer electronic wage payments, so they don't want to have checks, they can offer B, C, and D, let's just say. They would be forced, in the absence of providing consent, to a payroll card. So my payroll company doesn't offer, let's say a payroll company doesn't offer payroll cards, but they offer now B, C, and E. By changing the wording in E, would be forcing them, smaller payroll companies who do not have access to payroll cards, being out of compliance with this if the payroll company does not receive the information from the employee. How would the department look at that payroll company and saying you're no longer in compliance because you cannot offer payroll cards, and effectively possibly putting them out of business or forcing them into a contract with the payroll card company outside of their jurisdiction?
I mean,
That's a lot. I
It's
apologize.
okay.
It's the only way to get there.
I mean, fundamentally, at the end of the day, the responsibility is on the employer to pay, regardless of their arrangement with the payroll company. They have to be able to provide that pay without any cost to the employees or any fee to the employees. So no matter how the employer and the payroll company arrange that, ultimately, when it comes to an enforcement action, that potential penalty would fall to the employer.
So if one of my employees said, okay, I'm not giving you my payroll information, I'm not giving you my bank information, with the changes that are here, now defaulting to a payroll card, my company doesn't, let's just say my company doesn't offer payroll cards. They go to you guys and say, well, he's not giving me a payroll card even though I'm entitled to it by law. What's going to happen to that employer and that payroll company. Payroll company gonna get fined because they're out of compliance, possibly by not the DOL, but maybe somebody else? And what is the employer gonna be on the hook for?
So it'd be the employer's election on how they wish to pay. If the employer doesn't offer payroll cards, then they don't have to.
As is the current law.
Yes.
But with this change, shall pay tells me as an employer I have to pay by payroll card in absence of, and he didn't request a paper check.
Mhm.
Now I'm forced to pay on a payroll card.
Sorry, I'm sort
Yeah,
of.
yes, please.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
And it may be that perhaps the language itself is not relatively clear. As I'm reading the language in the original version of the proposed amendment, you look at provision 2, and it's starting with if an employer offers its employees the option of receiving wages by payroll card. So if the employer is not offering that option and they've elected some other payment, you could arguably say that the requirements to pay via payroll card would not fall under that umbrella if the employee is not providing the direct deposit. That being said, if you're looking at provision 2B kind of standalone, it does look like it makes a mandate that in the absence of that information being provided, that's going to be the default for the employer. So I think if there's any, the language may need to be cleaned up if there's any intent to go forward with that. I think you could arguably say that if the employer doesn't offer the option at all to pay via payroll card, then the provisions of 2B in the proposed language would not apply. But again, I don't think it's terribly clearly drafted. Again, the wording is very strong in paragraph B, but if you're reading it in conjunction with the opening paragraph of 2, I think you can construe it that way. And I'll defer to Attorney Garrigan if he thinks my reading is off.
That was a much more elegant way of saying what I was trying to say.
It was, but if the, if we take E,
Yep.
where we are,
E in the original proposed language, not in the amendment?
yes, in the original, it removes that in section E, it crosses it out. So now it defaults from, okay, I only offer EFT or direct deposit, so I only offer electronic means, we don't have checks, we haven't used checks in 20 years, or we're with the times, or we're whatever. Now it's telling me I have to pay by payroll card in absence of bank information. Because the default of being able to write a check because I don't have bank information is withdrawn because the employee has to consent to having a payroll being cut a live check. Whether it's in here or in the amendment, either way.
I think that initiating clause in section 2, I'm looking at, this is the original bill, page 2, line 5, puts a conditional clause on if the employer offers its employees the option of receiving wages by payroll card. So if that's not an option to your employees anyway,
Right, so do we pretty much agree that we do not like the changes on lines 26 through 28 on page 1 of the original bill?
Oh, I don't. Crossing all that out,
You don't agree to it?
I don't like that.
Oh, nor do I. Do we all agree we do not want that crossed out?
We do not.
Okay. I want to jump to page 2, lines 3 and 4. Nothing in this section will prohibit an employee or organization labor group from negotiating the method of payment of wages with the employer. Is there any problem with that? Not that we're going to pass a bill just for that sentence, but is,
I don't think anybody should be carved out. Why should a private employer who doesn't have union coverage be forced to abide by a separate set of rules than a CBA?
they do on a lot of things.
They do, but
We
this
carve
is-
them out on a lot of things when we,
We're talking about payment of wages. Why should they be held to a different standard than everybody else?
because if that's what the contract negotiators come up with the employer,
just saying. We're carving out a specific part of people that
Okay.
make, people that have wages. What do they do with their wage claims? They go to the CBA or they go to the Department of Labor?
You understand where he's trying to be consistent? Okay. Well, if that's the only thing we agree on, we may not just pass the bill. We'll wait and see. Going down to lines 16 through 24, which is what you just talked about.
Right.
We're not in favor of that.
Oh, no.
Okay,
And now all that removement of
No.
those.
correct. So getting down to line 27 and 28.
So again, they want to take out
Right.
that the employee voluntarily consents and make it a mandatory issue from the employer. From how I read it, from B going into C, starting in part 1. I mean, they interconnect to forcing an employer to go into a payroll part.
So now look at the amendment, page 2, in bold, has failed to provide, I'm trying to see what the difference is, failed to provide,
Nothing. They need that in order to force the payroll parts.
versus, for only electric wages, payments. Okay, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
Okay,
Except they added an employee request a paper check
okay,
under part B.
okay.
So someone that gets a check, if they don't have a bank account now, would have to go to the bank that maybe the business is doing banking with, right, for no fee. Because I think if you go to, I don't even know, because I haven't dealt with checks in so long, can they even go to another bank to cash a check that they don't have an account with?
No, it's the one, they can go to any bank, probably, show their ID and pay a fee. A lot of banks still don't like to do that, so it's difficult. Which is why they must provide a bank or a place for them to do it for free.
Or you can go to a supermarket.
Yeah,
Supermarket, Walmart.
but
Target.
you're gonna pay a fee at all those places.
But I think it's minimal, but still, it's another option. Or you
Well,
could
there's
have-
check cashing companies and,
Or you could have
But-
your significant other who does have a bank account cash it for you.
Well, the last time I had live checks, my bank, they could go to my bank and they would automatically cash it for free. That was our relationship because that's where the check was drawn off.
Right.
It was, regional, blah, 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 the whole thing. So never came up as an issue. Till now.
okay. Line 32 on page 2. And instead to receive wages via direct deposit. The proposed amendment would be the same, and instead to receive wages via direct deposit or paper check.
By request.
Oh, by request, yeah. At any time without penalty to the employee.
That's how we would do it now. If they wanted to go from a paper check to a direct deposit, we wouldn't be able to charge them any fees. Or if they wanted to come out of direct deposit and they were moving and wanted a paper check for a couple of weeks till they moved to their new house or something.
But see, this provides the employee the ability to say, I don't want it anymore.
Right. As they can anyways,
No, yes,
provided the employee the whole thing
guess.
is part D. Now they're mandating direct deposit or paper check instead of whatever they want. Whether it be an EFT, transfer, or anything else.
all right. E, lines 34 through 37. The employer shall provide employers with a list of banks, you can see it here.
Yeah, they all do that in here. Wisely, ATMs, whatever they have. Their own apps
So,
and whatnot.
so is this fine? Would this be fine to add to the current law for the people that are already using the cards? Do you have a comment?
The only thing that I would look at on this one is the consistency. We're talking payroll card and the rest of the law. And the first bill as introduced does have inconsistencies, whereas those are removed in the amendment. But if this is a part of the bill that you would want to keep in here, then I would just change debit cards to payroll card,
Correct,
just for
thank you.
consistency.
I'm just saying, you know, we can kill it, we can amend it. Some people don't mind lines 3 and 4 on page 2. Lines 34, 35, 36, 37, do they provide some kind of necessary wording that allows people to utilize their payroll cards and find a place to cash it for free, since payroll cards are already being used?
It's in there, whoever there is, they have domestic and ATM.
Right, but that's not New Hampshire law. That's the fees associated with it. I don't think anywhere it says they need to find a place where they can draw down their entire payroll card or whatever at a bank for free.
It's actually part A.
A on page 2.
Known fees, disclosures. I think E is redundant, unless I'm reading it incorrectly.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
I'm looking at lines 34 through 37.
Right.
Wondering if they should be out of the law. Representative Avalani seems to think that's covered in lines 7 through 15 on page 2, under 2A. I'm not sure I agree with him.
What I'm seeing in lines 11 and 12 is disclosure issues with regards to different types of fees.
But it doesn't tell you where you can get.
Um,
Well, you can-
no use of a payroll card that has an expiration date. And provision of a replacement payroll card before an expiration date at no cost to the employee. I don't see specific language in here that I would interpret, that the department would interpret as ordering the disclosure of a list of locations where the payroll card can be used without fees.
That would be, if I may.
Yeah, good.
That would be part of the fee structure within the cardholder agreement that you would sign with any of these people. You would have all your fees and instructions of where you can go, without having another section in law that tells you you have to do it again.
But
New Hampshire law, though, requires an employee to be able to get their payroll without having to pay a fee. So even if there is a fee that's associated with any of these particular third-party companies that have the pay cards, they can have whatever fees they want to. But there should, it should be clear that the law currently stands that there should be no fees.
Correct, but it's in their cardholder agreement, which every employee would sign with whomever authorizes their payroll cards.
I don't see where you're going. New Hampshire law supersedes an agreement with a pay card fee.
Yeah, but you would get this whole stack of paper with your pay card when you sign up for your pay card and sign on to ADP or.
But it doesn't tell you where you can get your payroll card. You withdraw your funds with no fee.
It does. It tells you in here. It's their ATM people.
What happens if they don't? I mean, these are some that do.
All of them have access to domestic ATM withdrawals. Allpoint is one of them. Star is another one. 3 or 4 different vendors that have debit and payroll card availability. All have it in their handout that you get.
So
You know that the ADP guy who's come here several times has said that any bank with the MasterCard logo will catch it for free, but that's only ADP.
Right. There's other ones that have it I mean, we went through all that earlier, how much you can and can't. And some of them do have over-the-counter limits, including banks have over-the-counter limits. So, does New Hampshire law really trump banking law?
if I, sorry, again, I'm apologizing, so my apologies. I think, and correct me if I misunderstood, Representative Caroline, you're referencing the contract that the third-party payroll company is engaging in and signing off on with the employer for providing all this information.
Correct.
The regulation of these contracts is not something that the Department of Labor is directly involved in. So if something were to change, and it's very key in banking, possibly that's involved in that area. But it wouldn't be the Department of Labor behind if there's something changing information to, putting that information within the contract, whether or not they're required to, if it were missing for some reason. I think what Attorney McGraw was sort of getting at was if it was outside of that paperwork that was provided, that perhaps the information about where you can access the free withdrawals and what websites are available would not necessarily be used. And it sounds like in practice right now, employers are getting that kind of standard contract package from a regulatory perspective. Those contracts were to change, that would be outside of the purview, the department being able to say, based on the way that the law is currently written, that the contract would need to change to reflect that.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to.
No, I'm just,
So I have one thing to add. And I say this with absolutely no disrespect to anybody. But when we heard this legislation originally, I'm just trying to figure out, is this a problem in the state? Or is this legislation that somebody could make money by selling these debit cards to companies? Because honestly, when we had the public hearing, I didn't see companies lined up at the door to either say they like this or they don't like it. So, I mean, is this, I guess that's where I'm at. Is this a problem here, or is it something that, I mean, and I have no issues either way, but trying to understand the whole thing, and I think we're confusing the situation. And if it's not an issue, and I've always said this with legislation, if it's not an issue, I mean, I think we're trying to fix something that's not broken. So
97%, 93%, according to all the information, people get their things through direct deposit. I'm sure there's people that are utilizing the payroll cards. Is it a way for the employer to save money possibly on expenses through payroll services? Sure. Could it be convenient to certain businesses? Especially businesses where their employees, maybe it's a New Hampshire employer and they're all over the country. Okay, or there are people, in New Hampshire company that has people on a oil rig out in the Gulf of Mexico. Then payroll card could be easy. Maybe at a foreign country, if they have employees, maybe it could be easy for those things. So there's a lot of reasons that a payroll card is justified and accepted by certain employees. We already have in the law the ability to use it. To kind of force something on someone, no, you're right. I don't think it's a problem that it needs to be thrust upon someone. I was trying to take a couple of the good things out of here, and I don't have a problem with lines 34 through 37. I mean, we can amend the bill, we can pass the bill as is, or we can ITL the bill. I thought it was I think it's a good exercise that we can tell the rest of our committee that we looked into this in a lot of detail and had good conversation on it. And then you can all explain to your fellow members your thoughts on it. And all I was trying to do is try to be as impartial as I could to try to just go through every single thing, what the changes are, how the department would act to it, and if there's anything that we felt could be needed. I think 34, 35, 37 is very good for the employee. I don't have a problem with lines 3 and 4 about organized labor if they choose to. I think organized labor is pretty smart. I think organized labor probably has everybody doing direct deposit. So those are the things I think that we can see there. The parts about making some of these other things we just are definitely non-starters for us. So You know, I will leave it up to the committee, this group as to what you want to do. Is there going to be any recommendation out of this committee, this subcommittee at this point? Or is it just, are we just going to leave it as no recommendation and you can discuss it with your fellow committee people when we have the executive session? Your choice is, it's up to whatever you guys would like to do.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully move ITL on the entire bill.
All right, we do have a motion.
I'd support that.
Representative Cahill seconds it. Any further discussion?
Even the amendment leaves me at unrest. It's obviously, I hate to say one company, but this is obviously a way to shoehorn payroll cards in as a default instead of a paper check. And
Exactly.
given the amount of fees, given the way that swipes are done, could amount to a large profitability to some of these companies under the guise of saving money for the employer on the backs of the employees. I'm not
Kind of like bagging your own luggage?
bingo. Or doing your own checkout at certain places.
I did that last night. I wondered why I did it.
Did you ask them if they have offer you workman's complication, throw you back out lifting those potatoes on the belt?
So we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments?
I think the law already requires that people get their pay without fee. So, and I think those who have cards or bank accounts or employers provide the information. So I don't think we need to add those lines at the bottom, 34, 37. I think ITL is the way to go.